Being able to outsmart and play mind games with your opponent is paramount when it comes to winning matches against highly skilled opponents. Pro players and competitive players do it all the time. Just take a look at this clip from CCGS Fall Season Week 4 in which Surgical Goblin juked out Nem Sensei several times in a row. After seeing this clip, you may be asking, whoa, that was just a fluke, right? Nem Sensei is just bad, right? The answer to both of those questions is of course no. Pulling off what Surgical Goblin did was definitely not luck at all. And on top of that, Nem Sensei is regarded as one of the best players in the world. So how did Surge do it? How did he know where to place the miner? What the f is going on, man? If you're asking these questions, then you've come to the right place, my friends, because I'm going to be explaining to you guys exactly how to formulate mind games with your opponent and completely outclass them in every sense of the word, outclass. However, today I can't really show you every single possible situation and scenario you can play mind games in because there are millions of them and it's just impossible for me to do that in one video. I'm just going to be telling you guys the steps to go about doing it and giving you guys the framework necessary to achieving the ultimate goal of pulling off a sexy mind game on your opponent. I'm Ronja and welcome back to another episode of Quick Tips, the series where I try to give you guys a lot of information in a short amount of time. Let's go ahead and get right into it. Hold up. Here are a couple of things you guys must know before I actually get into the details of explaining. Number 1, playing mind games requires a lot of experience. You have to know what your opponent will most likely do when you force them into a situation. Number 2, you will fail, and you may even lose a couple of games because you tried to pull off a mind game and it ended up not working for you. But don't get worried. Every single loss offers an opportunity for you to improve. Just make sure to learn from your mistakes and you'll get better, I promise. Number 3, it won't happen overnight. People like Surgical Goblin have thousands upon thousands of matches under their belts against other pro players. They've been playing the game longer than you and I combined, so don't get discouraged if you're not able to execute mind games perfectly right away. Now it's time to actually get into learning how to play mind games. Before a mind game is played, there are a few things that you must ask yourself. Number 1, what deck is my opponent using? Number 2, what cards does my opponent have in cycle? Number 3, what is my game plan going to be in this match? And number 4, what is my opponent's game plan going to be in this match? Number 1, identifying your opponent's deck is pretty easy for skilled players, but it may be difficult for people that are newer to the game. A lot of the time, you can identify the deck your opponent is playing after about 2 or 3 cards have been played. Other times, you'll have no idea what the heck they're using until every single card they have has been played. Regardless, you'll have to know what cards they have in order to work around them and use that knowledge against them. Knowing exactly what card or cards your opponent has in cycle is one of the hardest things to do in the entire game. There's no way that you're going to know exactly what cards your opponent has in hand at all times because battles are often fast-paced and hectic. Sometimes you'll just lose track, but try to make notes of these things. Number 1, try to know when your opponent's win condition is in hand. Number 2, try to know when the counters to your win condition are in hand. And number 3, try to know what spells your opponent has in hand. If they just use the zap spell, then you know it's out of hand. If they just use the rocket, then you know that's out of hand as well. Try to keep notes of these things. If they just dropped a hog rider at the bridge, you know that they don't have it and you can take advantage of that going forward. The more you play the game, you'll eventually develop a feeling or a hunch about what cards your opponent has in hand. This will come in time, so don't rush it or anything like that. It'll just happen to you the more you play the game. Now, it's time to formulate a plan of action. I'll be alluding back to Surgical Goblin's 200,000 IQ mind game play and explain his thought process to go about doing this. Okay, to start out the match, Surgical Goblin decided to cycle some goblins at the bridge. This does 2 things. Number 1, it allows another card to be cycled into his hand. We don't know what it was, but it was probably either a miner or a poison. Number 2, it forces a response out of your opponent. The very second Nem Sensei dropped the pump, Surge knew that he had to punish it. The goal of any deck that runs pump is to build up a huge elixir lead to plow through an opponent. Surge knew this, so he threw down the miner. Most players opt to throw the miner on the actual pump itself, and Surge knew this, so he decided to throw the miner on the tower instead and drop a poison spell to do damage in order to maybe juke out Nem Sensei. Surge had no idea what Nem Sensei would use to kill the miner, but he knew that it would most likely get damaged by the poison spell. Nem chose to put the Night Witch on the pump itself in anticipation for the miner, but got completely juked out. Not only that, but the Night Witch got nearly taken out by the poison spell as well. This was a huge win for Surgical Goblin. And the entire time, Surge was keeping track of what cards Nem Sensei had used, so this perfectly worked in his favor. The next juke is insane on so many levels. Surge thought 4 steps ahead of Nem in this situation. Pro players like Surge and Nem know that switching up miner placements is a good strategy. It keeps your opponent guessing and keeps them on their toes. In the second juke, Nem Sensei expected Surge to switch it up and try to play the miner on the pump, since he did not do that last time. But as you can see, Surge opted to go for the tower instead again. He knew there was no way that Nem would expect the same thing to happen twice, since Surge is a pro player like Nem. He also dropped the poison down there because A, he needed to damage the pump, and B, he knew that the Night Witch was the only thing Nem had in cycle to block the miner again. So perfectly executed on so many levels. He got the pump eliminated basically and did tower damage at the same time. The third juke is godly on so many freaking levels. It's multi-layered. I'll try to break it down for you guys. First of all, Surge knew that the Night Witch was the only thing that Nem had in cycle for the third time. So when he dropped the miner, he also dropped the bandit in the opposite lane to pressure. Nem thought that Surge might try to get damage in for several reasons on the tower. Number 1, the tower on the right side was relatively low, and a miner plus poison does a lot of damage to the tower. Number 2, it's double elixir, and a lot of pro players say that minering a pump during double elixir isn't really necessary because it doesn't do much during double elixir time. Like, a pump doesn't really provide that much value in double elixir, or nowhere near as much as it does in single elixir. So Surge knew that and knew 2 things were going to happen. Surge knew those 2 things and decided to drop the miner on the pump with no poison. At this point in the match, Surge just wanted to halt Nem's elixir flow and at the same time attack the weaker tower. As a result, Surge took out the pump and forced Nem to drop a defensive miner against the bandit, effectively screwing over every one of Nem Sensei's plans. You might be thinking, wow, Surgical Goblin played this perfectly, right? Well, if you say that, you're wrong, because Surge has actually gotten better at the game since this exact moment. I went to King's Cup and saw Surgical Goblin play live. There is one thing he did there that he actually didn't do here. Can you guess what it was? The answer to that question is BMing or using emotes. Every single time Surge outsmarted one of his opponents at King's Cup, he immediately threw the thumbs up. Doing this will get in your opponent's head, I guarantee you. It will make them feel as if you know exactly what they're doing, and it may cause them to tilt. This is the only scenario in which emotes is considered a mind game. Surge did this to all of his opponents, and after he did it, they started playing worse. Is BMing truly effective? Maybe, we don't really know. Either way, it's considered a mind game among a lot of pro players, and Surgical Goblin did it very well. In fact, this may be the reason why Surgical Goblin won the King's Cup in general, just because he was in his opponent's head the entire time. Either way, hats off to Surgical Goblin for his amazing performance in the King's Cup, and thanks to him for giving me this idea to make this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's my first time doing a video kind of like this where it's not exactly like placements or something about decks. It's something a little bit different where I kind of take a concept about Clash Royale and kind of elaborate on it and give my own 2 cents. But that's it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe for more daily content. I will see you guys later. Peace out.